Want change around here.
You saw the front of the building.
Terrible.
This the back of the building. They working on the front of the building. This the same people said, we gonna help you build what you want. How I'm gonna believe you, man? How I'm gonna believe them? Didn't I tell you I don't trust nobody? I'm coming over giving them the same passion and they smiling and laughing in my thing. Funny? We gonna ride through the fence that they ain't fixed the fence. We about to ride through this fence. This ain't even football side. This ain't even the football side. And y'all talking about mad at my Uncle Prime. Y'all mad at Dion, mad at Prime. This shit is every HBCU. Bro, we riding through the fence. This is track, bro. This is track. This is what they practice on. It's a straightaway. This is intramural field. You can't practice on this. These kids got this to work with. Trash. Yeah, I'm showing it. At this point, I gotta show this.
What it do? This is your brother Bishop of Bishop's Own TV, and today I got to talk about this edreed Bethune-Cookman situation because it really left a bad taste in my mouth, and I just got to correct some things. I got to correct some things because this is pretty much Deion Sanders all over again. And for the record, I'm not gonna necessarily get too deep into the Deion Sanders situation. It's a reason why I did make a video about it when it was first popping off, but it's some similarities to Deion Sanders and edreed and how they're approaching their jobs with HBCU'S. And this right here is just showing an ugly side of Black America's relationship with HBCU'S and its misunderstanding of the roles that HBCU'S play in an American society. edreed took it upon himself, and I know he's recently apologized for his social media outbursts, but the damage is done. But he pretty much just called out the administrators, people who are running these universities, and said, look, HBCUs need to change. And a lot of people had some negative things to say about HBCUs in support of edreed. Some people actually was like, no, edreed, you can leave where, the door hit your ass. Like, nobody asked you to come here. You know what I mean? So some people wasn't feeling what edreed was saying. And I'm more in I'm not feeling what edreed was saying demographic. And let me explain to you why. It don't have anything to do with, you need to keep this shit in house or HBCUs need our support no matter what. Look, here's the reality of the situation. I think a lot of people are not looking at things systemically. They're not looking at the history of HBCUs in this country, and they're not following the paper trail. See, they're looking at the surface and saying, well, these administrators are mismanaging money. And yeah, it's some truth to that. But people need to really do the research before they open their damn mouths. That's including edreed. Because let me just say this before I go into the actual facts, the actual data. Individuals like edreed and Deion Sanders came from PWIs, which is private white institutions or predominantly white institutions, right? So edreed, for instance, he came from the University of Miami. That's a predominantly white school. And at that school, they had a very successful football program. I mean, one of the most successful football programs in all of college history. So, with those programs, they're going to treat athletes like gods, especially we're talking football. And so edreed, he's coming from that background. where they're treated like, celebrities. These are students that are treated like celebrities on campus. PWIs are funded very well in this country. And they make a lot of money in this country. When you generate a lot of revenue for a state and federal government, state and federal governments reward these institutions. That's a fact. Even when you have private institutions that are predominantly white, like a Harvard or a Stanford or MIT, these schools have large endowments. They get large contributions. They get large donations. And these are some very powerful people in very high positions. I'm not talking on some Illuminati shit, common sense. You have to understand the alumni that goes to these schools, the corporations that in some cases are birthed out of these institutions. Now compare that to HBCUs. And that's not a fault of their own. That's not HBCU's fault. HBCUs was set up to fail. This is a fact. Because you have to understand this. And I think people are missing this point. State and federal governments fund colleges. Let me say it again. State government and federal governments fund universities and colleges. And HBCUs for decades have been underfunded by a lot. In comparison to the PWIs, HBCUs pretty much don't get shit. They get pennies on a dollar. So how do you expect HBCUs to be up to par with even some top tier high schools when they're underfunded? See, Ed Reed don't need to be talking shit to the administrators. What he needs to do is direct that energy at the state government and the federal government. So you need to be talking to the Florida government and the United States of America's government. But see, them fools are not gonna do that. Ed Reed won't do that shit. As tough as he is, as much of a badass as he is, including Deion, they won't point the finger at the real problem. Again, HBCUs, if they're underfunded, what do y'all expect them to do? Because a lot of people have this embedded white supremacy complex. Even black people. That's why I say white supremacy is not necessarily a man or a woman. It's a mind state. So a lot of people in general in this country, because white people are quote unquote the standards, look at white as right and black as wrong. So they automatically assume the worst in black people. So they automatically assume the worst in black people running universities and colleges. So they always point the blame, or solely point the blame, at those who are just dealing with the cards that they were dealt with. Do you understand that? If a HBCU is underfunded, how can they compete with PWIs? How can athletic programs in these HBCUs garner the same amount of revenue that a PWI has when the best black athletes all across the nation are going to the PWIs? It's a miracle that these athletic programs still exist at these HBCUs, because as much as I would like to see any and everybody get a chance, because not everybody is able to go to a predominantly white institution where the athletic programs are just the top tier. But as much as I would like for everybody to get a shot, and if that means going to a HBCU to earn a shot at possibly, going to a professional league at some sort of time, HBCUs might need to eliminate these athletic programs because the money is already spread thin. So yeah, a college like Bethune-Cookman, maybe they need to get rid of the athletic program. But then Ed Reed ass will be out of a job because the predominantly white institutions are not calling his name. They wasn't calling for Deion Sanders either until they saw his work at Jackson State University. But hey, let's just shit on HBCUs. Can there be some changes? Yes. But you have to be real careful in your criticisms of HBCUs. You have to be patient. And you have to give some grace because HBCUs have been grossly underfunded by the federal and state governments in this country. Think about it. Who is in control of these governments? It's predominantly white. The reason why HBCUs are failing is the same reason why predominantly black communities all across this country are failing. It's systemic, y'all. That's not even me like, okay, I'm just making shit up. No, it's actual facts. It's data. You know what? Fuck it. If y'all don't believe me, let's look at the white man. Let's look at what the white man says. Read this real quick, and then I'm out of here. So check this out. This is an article from The Breeze. It's legitimate. You can look this up. The United Negro College Fund calculated that between 2003 and 2015, the federal funding gap between historically black colleges or universities and private white institutions had quadrupled from about $400 to $1,600 per student. Let's go into this. For instance, here are a few numbers to quantify. According to a Forbes study, that's Forbes, from 1987 to 2020, HBCUs were underfunded $12.8 billion. Let me read that again. This is from Forbes, the white man, quote unquote. According to a Forbes study from 1987 to 2020, HBCUs were underfunded $12.8 billion. The same study shows that NC-A&T, or North Carolina A&T, suffered one of the single worst cases of underfunding in HBCU history in 2020 when they were underfunded around $2.8 billion in comparison to PWI counterparts. Come on, y'all. Come on. Again, you can do the research yourself. HBCUs have been underfunded for decades. And the main reason why HBCUs were doing so good prior to integration was the fact that black students had nowhere else to go for higher academics. They had nowhere else to go. So there wasn't a big of a brain drain then as it is today. Because now that it's integration, now that America is legally integrated, then black students, a lot of times they'll decide between HBCU or PWI. And in some cases, HBCUs, the only benefit that they have is the culture aspect. And culture doesn't necessarily pay the bills. Yes, it's a great experience, but it doesn't necessarily pay the bills. And that's not HBCU's fault. That's not their fault. HBCUs are doing the best they can. Again, yes, it could be some changes done. But what are you doing? What are you doing to make HBCUs better? And guess what? It's not up to individuals to make HBCUs better. Black people, by and large, financially, we're not even on the same tier. We're nowhere near the same tier as, white individuals who own majority of the wealth in this country. Much more than their black counterparts in this country. So how can we compete? Yeah, Beyonce can donate $100,000 to HBCUs all across America, but that ain't shit. And no offense to Beyonce, love what you're doing. But it's up to a government to provide those funds to these HBCUs. It's not up to celebrities. It's up to governments. And Ed Reed was way off base. Ed Reed, I'm sorry, brother. I'm not trying to say that jocks are stupid or whatnot, but you a coach. Coach, nigga. Coach. You are not a professor. You are not a dean. You are not a head of the financial department. You on the outside looking in. And you a coach. Coach your team. Stay out the damn league. You're not on the same tier. All right? Now, I know you ain't gonna listen to me shit. He might tackle me or something, or whatever. But respectfully, I say all this respectfully because that wasn't it, brother. All right, I'm done. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And till next time, holla.